So, Witcher 4 just got announced at the Game Awards, which I would say, out of everything that got revealed that night, was probably, for me at least, the biggest one of them all. And I'm probably not the only person saying this, but I am a huge fan of The Witcher. And I have been since the third game came out, aka The Wild Hunt. It came out nearly 10 years ago now, which is crazy to say. So it does mean a lot to me and so many others now that we've finally seen the continuation of the universe. Now, the big topic of debate with a game like this, as crazy as it is because we haven't actually seen any gameplay or anything, the main focus, as it does tend to be in this day and age, is on the main character, aka Ciri, who, if you don't know, in the third game is kind of, and really the whole Witcher universe is centered around her as a character. And if you played The Witcher 3 and you've played what is now considered the canon ending, I suppose, she is the logical next step for the games and where CD Projekt Red, the developers, plan on taking the story and the saga. And for a lot of people, that's a big issue, right? Because we are, by that definition, at the end of Geralt of Rivia's story. We're moving on to something different, which is caused a lot of concern. But not for me, personally. I think it makes sense. I think it's the logical decision. What I'm actually more interested in, because I'm going to steer far clear away from all this discourse around DEI, woke, all these phrases. I don't care. I want a great game, and I passionately care about the Witch universe and all the pieces of media within it. That's all I care about. And if we're looking on a technical level, what makes me excited is the transition to Unreal Engine 5. They made this announcement a few years ago after the release of Cyberpunk 2077, which is in a good space now. I have played it, and I've done a video on it, and I've played it multiple times. Go and check that game out if you haven't. It's a great one now. And that was on Red Engine, as was Witcher 3. So they were both in-house engines built specifically for those kind of games. I always felt they were a bit limited in that regard, and they were a bit janky. But the announcement now, they moved to Unreal Engine 5, which to most people is a cause for concern. I have experience developing the engine myself when I studied at university, and I know the ceiling of a software like that. It's very powerful, and that gets me very excited because done right, optimized well, and with the right people and the right resources, a game in that engine can be seriously impressive on a technical, but also on like a optimization level. Done right, it can be brilliant. And I think the ceiling is very, very high for a new Witcher game on a new engine with new tools. Gets me very excited. And if that rendered trailer was anything to go by, in engine, that was for the record, the graphical fidelity advancements we could be seeing in the next 2-3 years in terms of what Witcher 4 would even look like gets me very excited. Now, speaking of the trailer itself, I think from a lore perspective, for those who are engaged in that regard, the big question that came to my mind is how Ciri is going to undertake the Trial of the Grasses, which, if you don't know, is this sort of, I don't want to say surgery, but I guess that's a way to call it that. It's a process, a biological process that witches go through when they're young that kills most of them. But those who survive are able to take on the genetic mutations, which allow them to become witches, and all the sort of perks and advantages that go with it, if you will. No character would ever take that willingly, or no witcher would ever allow it willingly. They sort of discarded the whole idea at the end of Witcher 3. They don't want to make any more witches. It's almost like a dying breed. So that's an interesting thing, and how they're going to tackle that. Because Ciri was only a witcher by name by the end of the game, and I haven't read all the books, though I am, of course, reading through them at the moment. So my knowledge is limited outside of that. But that's an interesting topic on how they're going to tackle. But for the most part, I trust CD Projekt Red. Obviously, there are issues around Cyberpunk and the way that launched, but that comes to more of a technical perspective and how they approach that. So there are obviously causes for concern, but for me, they aren't to do with the lore. They aren't to do with the world or the writing, which is something I'm going to focus on a little bit, because I really wanted to talk about The Witcher 3 just as much as 4, because for the longest of times, it's been one of my favorite games ever made, and it still remains to this day. I think alongside now Baldur's Gate 3, which I did a video on a couple months ago, those two sit firmly in my top 5 favorite games I've ever had the joy of experiencing. And the main reason that is for a game like The Witcher 3 is the writing. It's not the gameplay. And I think most Witcher fans will tell you that the gameplay in itself of Witcher 3 is nothing special. It's nothing to write home about. It hasn't aged very well. The combat is pretty, you know, surface level. You can very much exploit it quite easily. A lot of the UI is a bit obtuse. The crafting can be a bit frustrating, but the story is some of the best you will ever see. I think the writing, I can't think of a game off the top of my head that has better written characters and better written dialogue than it, to be honest with you. And obviously that is partly aided by, of course, the fact that these characters are so well developed from the books. So they have a very, CD Projekt Red always had a very good framework to build off of. But it takes a skill to bring that to life into a video game. We've seen plenty of adaptations go awry, so it's not a walk in the park. It's definitely no easy task. And replaying it for the third time only recently, since The Witcher 4 got revealed, I got my spark back to re-enter this world and really look into what it can bring and how good it is. Because I think you go through ebbs and flows of, I don't want to say obsessed, but, you know, involving yourself and delving into these worlds that people have built. And I've been doing that all with the spin-offs. The Witcher card game, Gwent, of course, which was originally a sort of fun mini game put into The Witcher 3, which garnered so much popularity they made a standalone, which I have an unhealthy amount of hours in. Unfortunately, the development has died down for it now, but it still has a cult following, which I am very much part of. And of course, other spin-off games like Thronebreaker as well, which sort of encompasses similar mechanics, but with some incredible writing, which you should definitely check out. But going back to Witcher 3, as I said, the writing is its strong point. But not just that, the world building, these grand vistas, the music which you're hearing right now, which I'll have playing over the top, it's just everything fits together perfectly. And it's one of those worlds you can really just take in and appreciate that the developers just went every extra step to bring to life, from imagination to actual reality. And as I said, it's no easy thing to do. The Netflix show was definitely a backward step throughout the whole thing, regardless of what Henry Cavill did and how he tried to do his best to remain faithful to the books, much to the ire of the producers and such. And it's a shame how that turned out. But we can hope that CD Projekt Red, with their track record of good writing and incredible storytelling, will do Ciri justice for the kind of character she is and create a story, not that it's just worth telling, but worth playing through as well. And I didn't even talk about the expansions. And I use the word expansions because CD Projekt Red don't like the word DLC when it regards to within regards to their big projects, or content additions, if you will. And expansions is definitely the right word to use, because The Witcher 3's two of them are the size, if not bigger, than average games these days. You know, Blood and Wine, which was the second of the two, is my personal favorite, and it shows you the flexibility of their team, of what they're able to achieve, because the Witcher universe is fundamentally a world that is deprived, full of conflict, and it's not a nice place to be, if we want to say lightly, you know. And they really just departed from that and explored the world of Toussaint, which was obviously inspired by French and Italian folklore and also fairy tales as well, European fairy tales. And it's a complete tonal shift, which they absolutely nail. And equally, there is conflict. There is this sort of air of mystery. In fact, the main crux of the story is a murder mystery. And they nail that so well. And Hearts of Stone is the sort of antithesis to that. Very much dark and supernatural. And it just goes back to my point, as I said, about flexibility. CD Projekt Red have the utmost faith in them to nail those, whatever tone or themes they want to approach on The Witcher 4's release. I have full faith in their team, even if a lot of the members who created Witcher 3 back then aren't at the helm. I think what the company stand for, what the reputation they have in terms of final products. I say final products because we don't take into account the launch of Cyberpunk 2077. They do a very good job. So I'm very excited. And if you don't know, Witcher 3 is on sale on Steam, and I assume most platforms. And every time it goes on sale, particularly the Game of the Year edition, which includes both expansions, I stand by it being possibly the greatest deal in all of gaming in terms of value for money, because you can pick it up for about £7, which is probably about $10. when it goes on sale. And that will accomplish you about 150 hours worth of gameplay. Maybe even more if you really want to tackle everything. And every minute of every hour in that playthrough you will experience is worthwhile. There are no, bulked up sections, no inflated periods. Everything in that game is worth playing through, not just once, but twice or even 3 times over with what I'm doing right now. And I can only hope that The Witcher 4 follows the same suit.